radiant with great splendor, and bears a likeness of you most high. Praised be you, my Lord, through sister moon and the stars. In heaven you formed them clear and precious and beautiful. Praised be you, my Lord, through brother wind, and through the air, cloudy and serene, and every kind of weather through whom you give sustenance to your creatures. Praised be you, my Lord, through sister water, who is very useful and humble and precious and chaste. Praised be you, my Lord, through brother fire, through whom you light the night, and he is beautiful and playful and robust and strong.
Hey, Bahamas, once you've watched this.
Good afternoon, Bahamaland, and welcome to another very exciting edition of Voice of the Bays, The Environment Speaks. And I'm going to ask our co-host, Javon Hunt, to introduce our magnificent guest this afternoon.
So, hello, Bahamaland. It's been a minute. Happy to be back here on this rainy day, but nevertheless, it's a great day. And in studio today is my boy, my buddy, my friend, and a good, the person for science, I feel, in the Bahamas. Anytime I have a science question, we have to go to him. If you remember Bill Nye, the science guy, we have in studio Dr. Anselino Davis, who's the principal and CEO of Science and Perspective. And today, he's giving us the science and perspective on environmental policy and impacts. So basically, we want you to listen in. We want you to hear the science and perspective view on not just environmental policy and impacts, but we're going to talk about other stuff too. So welcome to the show, Dr. Leno.
Thank you very much. It's always good to be in studio with you all. I know it's going to be an exciting and enlightening conversation. Sometimes it's not really just about passing on information, but also about finding the right questions to ask. And I think that's what a lot of Bahamians need right now. We need to know which questions to ask of the policymakers, of the decision makers, and the people who are coming in to impact our environment.
Okay, so I just want to start off, like, for those who might have a fuzzy view of why environmental policy. Why? Like, sometimes people don't understand why, say, we kicking up a fuss, or it's like, no, that shouldn't be like that. Like, tell us why. The why.
So if you go back and you just think about how do we become Bahamians? As Bahamians, what is our right to the resources that we have? What is in our environment? What we engage with and stuff like that? We have a constitution. And our constitution actually gives us a right to be scientists, right? We have a right to freedom of conscience. We can think, we can make decisions for ourselves. We have the right to know about what's going on, what people are intending to do in our environment. We have a right to proper representation by people who are making decisions on our behalf. And then we have a right to use those resources around us to have gainful employment, to have a life and livelihood. And when you get down to it, every decision about the environment affects who can be in that environment. It affects how you can interact with the others that are there. It affects your economics. Can you use the resources in the environment to gain a livelihood? And then, of course, the environment itself. We have some things in our environment, if we destroy them today, no one will ever have them again in the future. Some of the new laws and legislations, like mining, you can say someone has the right to mine in a forest, but once you dig down into a forest, that means no one in the future will have a right to the forest there, right? So now you have to understand how the environment interacts with itself and how people interact with these environments. And you have to also have a look into the future and think about, my sons, shout out to Oliver and Leonardo. They are the Bahamians who are going to be engaging with these resources in the future, who they're going to want to eat some wild guava, right? They're going to want to be able to dive and see fish, or even capture fish for them to eat, right, in the future. And they don't want those fish to be oil fish. You want boiled fish, not oil fish, right? So you want to think about how these things impact us in the future.
Yeah, Leonard, that brings me to bring in something very specific. At the present time, we have about 6,200 square miles of land. And because of climate change, sea level rise, we're losing some of those square miles every year. We have something like 90,000 square miles of ocean. And we have been touted as having the most beautiful and clean ocean on the planet. But there's something there that's kind of foolishness in that whole talking. And then we're supposed to have the cleanest air on the planet. And so that's the cleanest air, the cleanest ocean. And from outer space, astronauts declared us as having the most beautiful spot on planet Earth. But my concern as an 83-year-old man who have enjoyed all of these magnificent things of our Earth, our planet, our waters, etc., I am becoming at my age extremely anxious about what is being done to our ocean, what is being done in terms of selling off the bosom and the belly of what we own in this planet, and specifically what is happening in our ocean. And I think later on we're going to get right down to the nitty-gritty of that, because I think we'll be talking about things that are happening now in the Exuma Keys, which has caused a lot of contention recently, and whether or not we're being the stewards of our environment, and who is controlling our environment, who is benefiting from the environment, who is selling off the birthright of our people.
Yeah.
Those things are really causing me to have a lot of anxiety. And I'm hoping that by the time I pass on to another dimension, that I could see some sort of transition. As you're a scientist, and I know your concern is what is happening in Exuma. And so I want us to bring this down to the nitty-gritty as to what is the perspective of our government in terms of preserving these islands and the beauty of them, the ocean and the land, for future generations.
Keeping in mind that same definition which you gave of what the policy should be.
So
So
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
to keep that perspective.
And so as part of what you got at is, one, people around the world recognize the Bahamas as this really beautiful place when you see it from space.
Yeah.
Right. We are leaders in the bone fishing industry. Millions and millions of dollars come to the Bahamas for bone fishing. The scuba industry, underwater filmmaking, shark diving. These are things that are essentially tied to the environment. We have a stable conch fishery that is the queen conch. It's economically extinct in the rest of its range, right? We have a fishery here in the Bahamas. We have a sustainable lobster fishery that is actually globally certified by the Marine Stewardship Council. And these are people looking at us from outside, seeing this big picture view. But at the same time, as a nation, we have pockets within our nation where that isn't the story. You know, in New Providence, you have the dump that burns every once in a while, or that catches fire every once in a while. It's getting under control now that they have a more of an environmental bent with the New Providence Ecology Park. You have the raging wildfires that we had here early this year and last year, and those would affect the air quality in those locations, right? But when people look at the whole nation, they get a different picture. And when you look at the whole nation, you have to have a policy that applies to the whole nation. And so I actually have the Environmental Planning and Protection Act and some of the notes. One thing is you have a minister. So the minister who's responsible for the environment, they might be responsible for the general operation of the Environmental Planning and Protection Act of 2019. And this act actually took a lot of the power and authority from different groups and kind of coalesced it into one. So now you have a director of environmental planning and protection, and this minister, the minister responsible for the Environmental Planning and Protection Act, they actually can approve a national environmental policy framework, and they can cause that to be laid before the House of Assembly. So you want a minister who's aware of the issues in the environment, who's knowledgeable about not just the environmental problems that we have, but the resources and opportunities that we have, and also what the management issues can be. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that the Director of Environmental Planning and Protection is actually appointed by the Governor General. Right? So these are things where you have inside the act, it has this strength where it puts that director in a position where they're appointed by someone who's not, so they're not run by the cabinet appointed person, right? They're not run by this Minister of Environment who could change potentially every 5 years, right? If you have a Governor General who could then appoint this person and make sure that they're doing their duties, that becomes different. And that's actually a really cool strength that we have written into this act that a lot of people don't think about. But also this director, they are responsible for things like maintaining the environmental registry, and they can issue environmental orders. So you have a director who has a mandate to maintain the environmental registry. So they say, if you're saying the Bahamas have the cleanest water, what does clean water look like? If you go and take a sample of water from the ocean in the Bahamas, what does that look like? How many bacteria inside it? What's the salinity level? What type of other chemicals are in it? If we don't have that baseline, when someone goes and spills something in the ocean, they say, well, that was always like that, right?
That's true.
That's true. So if you don't have any baseline for them to refer to, then you also have to call people like myself, like my colleagues, like the other Bahamians educated in natural and geospatial sciences, right? You call them and say, come on, find out for us how we need to clean this up and what clean looks like for this area. But we need to support them from the beginning. You also have environmental officers designated under this act. So you could have the Director of Environmental Planning and Protection. They can actually have these officers who are kind of deputized so that they can enforce and perform these functions that the director has. So the director is mandated to make sure these things happen, but you only have one director. And to be honest, we have very few environmental professionals in the Bahamas who do all of these different things, right? You might have someone who's really good at birds, but they ain't necessarily can go scuba diving in the ocean, right? You might have someone who knows all the corals, but they ain't a seagrass person, right? And we also have inside the act, the director can cause people to do things. So the Director of Environmental Planning and Protection could identify you and say, Dr. Davis, I know you know what the birds are. Go to this island, please. Someone wants to do a development. Tell me what birds are there. Tell me how those birds will be affected by this thing, right? Because of our Constitution, they can't force you to do something without remuneration or without appropriately paying you and stuff like that. But they can allow you to do that, or they can tell you to do that within your scope of abilities or capacity, right? So that's something that we have that's throughout the Bahamas. We have our Marine Resources Act and our Fisheries Resources and Jurisdiction Act and documents. We have our Forestry Act, our protected tree species. Those things apply throughout the Bahamas. And when we talk about policy, we need to know what these policies are so that you and I, as a Bahamian, if we driving down the road or if we riding in our boat and we see something happening, we should at least know who you're gonna call, right? And then Ghostbusters.
I was thinking about it.
Yeah. Some of these people just pop up out of nowhere and then disappear when they do their damage, like ghosts. But if you see someone pushing down a forest with a bulldozer, you should be able to call up the Department of Forestry and say, hey, Department of Forestry, I see these people denuding a part of the Bahamas. And that forest comes under the jurisdiction of the Department of Forestry based on the law and policy enacted in the Bahamas. You call the Department of Forestry and you call the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection, and you call your Minister of Environment, and if they pushing down the mangroves, you call Department of Marine Resources because they're inside a wetland, right? And that's how I tell my students, and my students are not just my university students or my high school and primary school students. Anyone who's listening to this right now could consider themselves one of our students, right? You call everyone and you tell on these people. And then you have policies related to, like, how do you report these things? So inside Environmental Planning and Protection Act, yeah, if you tell on someone and you send that to Environmental Planning and Protection, they can issue stop orders for those things. They can quantify the damage, and they can issue a fine or a fee for whatever damage those people have done. We need to understand these policies so that we can take action on our own behalf.
So it sounds like it's a question of educating the public, like really breaking it down. And it seems like it's a huge topic. Like you say, it could be overwhelming because the Bahamas ain't just, this one little spot. Like, it's spread out geographically.
Right.
And you have, we need people on almost every island to be the key person to contact, say, hey, I see this. But what you're suggesting is all of us need to be that key person, and all of us have to have maybe some speed numbers on speed dial to say,
exactly,
to facilitate, this process. So if you see something, like I remember there was the situation on Bimini where, a resident saw something and they made a video about it, and they, called some people, and it was like, what's happening? These people how are they allowed to do this? You know what I mean? So it has to be some sort of,
okay. And I'm familiar.
Steps.
I think I'm familiar with the video that you're talking about, but I want to let all of your listeners know today, when you do these videos, these are my recommendations. One, identify yourself. When that goes around on social media, someone might take your voice off that and put some music on it, right? Someone might take off, they might clip out a piece of that, right? But you need to have that original video where you say, this is my name. I am Dr. Ancelino Davis. And say where you are exactly. I am at this point. A lot of them just take a close-up video of what is going on wrong right there. They don't pan the camera around and show the surrounding environment. You want to give context, right? You want to say, I am at this beach next to this building, across from this bay, and this is what these people are doing. And you need to put the date, because the issue that you have today, your video might go viral today, and then nobody talks about it. No one does anything. 4 years later, something similar is happening. But when someone sends that same video around, now it's taken out of context. Right. And so someone can look at that and say, oh, look what they're doing again. But then someone else is going to come back and say, no, that's an old video. You're lying. And so then it corrodes your credibility in that situation. And so we want you to say who you are so that we could follow up and get more information, where exactly you are, when this activity is happening, and what you perceive to be the issues, right? You will say, I am here as a fisherman in this location. I normally park my boat inside this this wetland during storms and other major events. The people here are filling in this wetland, right? And this is from an example that actually has happened, right? It's happened. It's actually happened in multiple places, in a few different islands. But you have someone who's filling in a wetland, and once you say that, once you say what the resource is that you are worried about, as a fisherman, you get your bait fish from inside this wetland, you park your boat inside this wetland, you have a beach or sand that's being moved. Each of these resources trigger a different ministry or department or directorship. And so now you have this evidence that is time stamped. It has a location. It has the context. It has you as well documented, and that When you send that to me on my social media, or you send that to one of the beings, Bahamians educated in natural and geospatial sciences, and they send that into us, we know exactly whose office, whose desk that's going to fall on. And when we activate that, when we flash that bat signal, right? That's how we, and in the last year or so, we've had a lot of really good engagement from our leadership in these government ministries, where I know that when I call them, I can send it direct to their WhatsApp. I can call them on the phone directly and give them the layout that as far as I know what's going on, right? So they will activate their processes. Now we have policies in place. So if you just send something around on social media, nobody knows where it came from, nobody could verify it, then you mightn't have any support.
Yeah, you wouldn't have the impact that you would originally
You wouldn't have the impact.
Yeah.
But we need to document it and understand.
Dr. Leno, just to give credit to these particular individuals, they're not scientists like you, or maybe half-time scientists like myself, but these are people who are genuinely concerned about what is happening to their environment specifically. And they almost take it for granted that, hey, if I film a little activity in a particular spot on a bay in Bimini, and able to send it hopefully to whoever may be concerned, that they hope that some kind of resolution will be given, or some stoppage will be imposed on activity such as that. But until we get our people trained at the level that you're talking about, it's going to be a long time from now. And I think we need to have that. We need to have that on every island, and specifically on these islands that are being developed by foreigners, and who come in and can willy-nilly do anything with respect to dredging the beaches, dredging shallow water, etc., and even places where people go out in the water and pick up conch. And so that education level has to be implemented on every little island, so that people become guardians of their specific environment. And if they're sufficiently informed, then they could pass on this information logically and systematically and scientifically even to the people who can do something about it. And I think that is what is happening right now in a lot of our islands, where the people just stand and they see people come in, they plan all of these things that's going to mess up the environment, whether it's on land or whether it's in the ocean or whether it's in the Bay Area, and they cannot do anything. So they're waiting for someone from the outside to come and say, hey, we come to your assistance. But it's a long road, and we got to train our people to be at home in their land. And that is something that, like when I was growing up in Long Island now with a little boy, I mean, you can have people come there and do something like what I see happening today. No, man. We would take them out of the bay and dive them down into the mud for a little longer, and teach them some good sense. We're not going to let them do that to our environment. And that's why if you go in Long Island today, you find our environment is basically safe and sound, because the people who are accustomed to benefiting and living from the land and the water, from the Bay Area, from the mangroves, they know the value of them. And so they won't let any Tom, Dick, and Harry come in there. And for example, even in the mangroves, the red mangroves, when I was growing up on Long Island, little boy, we go out early in the morning, because I don't know if any of you know that at nighttime, there's a little shell that crawls up from the mud and comes up the stem of the red mangroves, the roots. And they're there in the morning. And then we used to harvest them and let the body rot out. And we used to send them to Nassau, and then they used to make necklaces and bracelets out of them. And so, the mangroves were home to us now. And that's why I can get very angry when I see people willy-nilly destroying mangroves or grass seed bread, grass or coral reefs, etc. Because all of those things, that's all we had to live on.
Right. And we have this situation now where you have one group of activists and advocates who are trying to protect the environment. And then you have another group who are saying, we want to capitalize on the environment, right? We want to earn money from the carbon credits that we're putting out, or we want to earn money from the aragonite. But then you have another group who's coming in from outside, and you know what? We don't even use it. You know, they never been snorkeling, they never been scuba diving,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the people who are making the decisions for you, you don't know, you can't give me proof of them actually having snorkeled in the bay near these areas where they're gonna approve a big development, right? But the local people who live there, they are supposed to get an opportunity to actually evaluate what's going to happen at the very least. So that's the first thing.
Mhm.
And over the course of the past few years, we've had several incidences where the people were not informed in time, or they were not informed at all, or they are told what's going to happen, right? And so when you think about this, my knee-jerk reaction, yes, to get upset, right, and annoyed. But then after I calm down and I drink my bush tea, I will say, what is the policy? What is the process that's supposed to be followed? So, for example, you have an environmental impact assessment that the director of environmental planning and protection can tell a development they have to do. So, if you have any development going in, and the director determines that this is going to have a significant impact on the society, the economy, or the environment, they can issue an environmental impact assessment order, right? Now, once they do that, the people who are impacted by this development, they have a right to see and review this environmental impact assessment. Now, you get to see that, and you are supposed to have about a month before they present it publicly. So they put out the documents and you get to read the documents. Some of these documents are 500 and something pages, right? And so I tell my students, if you can't read 100 to 200 pages a day, it's unlikely for you to be able to get through any of these. But you could focus on the parts that identify you and your community, right? You're going to talk about if it says anything about the marine system and you're a fisherman, get used to reading something about, oh, what part of the water are they going to use? Where are they putting in their docks? Where is their boat going to come in and out of their area? Does that mean I can't be floating out there free diving anymore? I can't take my snorkeling guests out there anymore? Because if you have a freight barge coming in and out, that will be unsafe for me and my guests. And then if I'm also eating from the reefs there, and you have your service dock there where you're bringing fuel, you're unloading and offloading your waste there. Now, me, my guests, my family who's eating from that area, we're all at risk. So the government is mandated to actually put these things in place and say, you know, what is the impact to you? And then maybe they have to come and talk to you and say, you know what, we're going to put this thing in. Is no longer safe for you to eat here, to eat from this fish here. And if that stuff is going in, you need to understand what your environmental and your economic and your social impacts are. Does this mean that your community is now going to lose that fisheries culture? Is that going to mean that you can no longer have the protein that you need in your diet, and you now have to pay for it from the resources that this development is bringing in? So that means that you are now tied to this development, whether you want to or not, right? There's so many things that come in, but first and foremost, you want to know the policy, and you can say, listen, government, you did not tell us in time. And now we have this particular development coming in Exuma. They've significantly changed where they're putting their docks and marinas. So they had a public consultation, right? And people came to the meeting, and people voiced their concerns and their opinions. People turned in their questions for them to be responded to in the environmental management plan. So you write in what you feel are the impacts to you and your community. And they're supposed to, by by the mandate to actually consider all those things and respond to each of them.
In the town meeting?
Not in the
Not in
town
the
meeting,
town
because
meeting.
that
Oh,
happens
so-
right then. So
Okay.
after the town meeting, you have another month for you to send in your issues and stuff.
But,
Right.
Dr. Leno,
But now once they change it,
Yeah.
this is the problem. They change these things. And did they do another town hall meeting? Right? Did they issue out a new environmental impact assessment for the community to review? Because now you have a different part of the island, a different set of seagrass, a different harbor that's now going to be affected in a totally different manner from what they presented to the people. And this is where you lean on that policy and say, from the policy, it says that you have a responsibility to me as a Bahamian citizen.
So before you answer that, Uncle Joe, I see you ready to answer that. So I want to tell everyone that we're in the halfway point in this show. Time flies when you're having fun. And of course, our guest is Dr. Anselino Davis, and he's talking about the science and perspective on environmental policy and its impacts. So if you want to be a part of this conversation, please give us a call. Feel free at 602-1033. 602-1033. We'd be happy to hear from you, especially talking about these projects, in Exoma, in Bimini, or wherever else that you might know of. Call us so you can be a part of this conversation. I wanted to ask you, before Uncle Joe says his comment or question, so would it be ideal for the for whoever's issuing DEP that to issue the impact assessment to the community like way in advance, a month in advance, so that they could be prepared for the town meeting, and then any changes do the same process all over again?
So this is one of the major issues that I have with the way the law is written and the way the policy is enforced or enacted. It doesn't specify that the director must publish the environmental impact assessment on the DEPP website. So you might have a business who's publishing, who's advertising all of their residences for sale and stuff on one website. And then they have a different website where they have their environmental impact assessments posted, right? So if you're going to the town hall meeting and they're talking about this development that's coming in, it doesn't line up exactly with where you go to find out the environmental impact assessment issues related to it. And then if you go on the DEPP website, they have, I think they had 20 environmental impact assessments last I looked. But I've been able to track down a little bit more than 40, which are inside my science and perspective database. So when you have that disparity, you have some EIAs are posted on the DEP website. Some are posted on the environmental consultant's website. Some are posted on a private website that's owned by the developer. And those things can go up and come down when they want. They can change the ones that they post. Maybe they post an EIA, they make an amendment and they take down the old one and they put up the new one, but you don't get to see the differences in the two, right? Or they might post the EIA, but not the environmental management plan. And so these things, because there are so many inconsistencies, what I really think is we need more standards in our environmental policy. It's one thing to say you can tell people to publish an environmental impact assessment, but if you don't have any restrictions or requirements for what goes into the environmental impact assessment, if you can't specify, what is a trigger, if this island is inside a certain area or a certain distance from seagrass or fisheries, you need to have certain things in it, right? And the same EIA, they're putting in marinas and they have these beautiful flow diagrams and assessments for what happens to water inside the marina. But their maps don't extend 200 feet, 400 feet outside of the marina where you have the seagrass and the corals and the people using the fisheries. So when they cut off that piece of the diagram, because I'm a GIS specialist as well, I'm looking at that map and I'm like, why did they draw the boundary to their map there? right? Is it a property boundary where they no longer own that property? It's not an environmental boundary because I know that ocean is connected to the next piece of ocean.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah, well, you know, Doc, where you're talking, and I have the whole picture. I don't know if you've ever been to Little Samson or Big Samson Key.
I've been to, yeah.
Yeah. And you realize that that is one of the most beautiful spots on planet Earth. The waters between those two keys. And it is probably at the high tide, is probably like 20 feet deep. And the waters, because of the gradation of the layout at the bottom of the sound, and then the ocean on one side and the Bay Area on another side, the waters are flowing at like 10 miles an hour through that area.
Yeah, when you catch that drift dive,
You
and
get
just
a
let the
drift
water
tide,
take
you go, and then you look down at that bottom, and you see all the magnificent coral is still alive, both hard coral and soft coral. You see all the magnificent fish around there.
And turtles. There's a
the
lot of
turtles and rays and everything up in that area. And then you're just floating along, and I see this huge 2-foot Nassau grouper coming out of one from the coral reef there. And this flows out into the ocean on one side. And of course, the Russian water, because of the gradation of the Bay Area and the ocean, that gives us this pull one way and then the running the other way when tide is ebbing. And it is, I cannot conceive of any environmental aspect being given to do anything to that particular area, because it's, and then they talk about, and the seagrass for the turtles in there, there's turtles in there, and the turtles come from that area and go into the shallow water by the sandy beaches, and they come up and almost on the land, and they're flowing in around, and then you have the spotted rays in there as well. My God, why even give any consideration for dredging there? Because the fact is that you have an area which is a developed, and I'm talking about things because I've been in every foot of that area in the water and on land. Then on one side, you have where we have a developed and also developing a wetland area with red mangroves and black mangroves specifically. And then the red mangroves are propagating themselves out in the shallow area. And when they do the dredging, that is going to bring all of that out there, flowing out. And they talking about transplanting seagrass. Where did that idiotic idea ever come from?
Yeah. So in the science community, we also we're struggling to find any evidence of successful transplanting or propagation of seagrass communities in the tropics. I'm not saying that they don't have enough money to throw at it to make it possible, but that in itself is very difficult. Just to tie back into what you're talking about, and nothing that I say is intended to disparage any of the scientists who actually work in the consulting for these teams, but for the area that you're talking about, there's the Turtle Grass Resort, which is on one of the Samson Keys, right?
The big Samson,
right?
Key. Yeah.
And they were permitted to make a sustainable resort, low impact. They did a roll-on, roll-off dock that has no dredging for it, and it won't need maintenance dredging. Now you have the Integra one that's actually going to dig 2 marinas into established wetlands on the south end of Little Samson. And so they're actually going to dig out 2 wetlands, and then they're going to leave a small wetland in the north, but they're also going to do major dredging on that north side. The issue is, and one of the issues is also that if you're having a Minister of Aviation and Transport or a Ministry of Aviation and Transport and investments, and you're bringing in investors, you have a multi-million-dollar investor who's already committed to having a sustainable, eco-friendly resort that integrates education for local Bahamians and stuff like that. But then right next to the beach, one of their pristine beaches that they expected to have tourists be able to just snorkel out from there and see the turtles and the seagrass and all that you just talked about. I mean, I snorkeled out there and I've seen like 6, 7 conch in like 10 minutes,
God.
right?
Yeah.
But now you have someone first dredging now to establish that thing, and then you're going to change the way that water moves. So you're gonna actually probably smother most of that seagrass and push it away from the shoreline. Then you're gonna have the influx of these boats, right? You have this boat transport in and out that's going to change the water chemistry as well. And you're gonna change the sound profile in that area. So the turtles and stuff, they don't want to be there. The fish don't want to be there if they are hearing all this noise all the time. And so you're gonna have those challenges where you're dealing with you're now dealing with a major investor to that island, to that group of islands. Now considering, do they pull out, right? And other investors who are thinking of doing these nice sustainable things, especially in an area like the Exumas, where their pride of place is for having the most beautiful, untouched, pristine waters and keys ever. You could go and snorkel into the grotto and visit the James Bond locations. But can you imagine that with 100 guests a day? No, like that's a totally different Exuma. Inside that area, snorkeling and hiking, and the cat there, the lignum vitae trees, orchids,
even the gum trees.
Yeah.
We used to have chewing gum. Chewing gum was the gum from the gum tree,
the wild dilly gum tree.
wild dilly gum tree.
Yeah.
Even those there. Then they have been preserved on the Big Samson Key, which is beautiful because, like you said, there was no dredging in that beach, and the turtles come right up into that beautiful water. I mean, why disturb that?
And all development has some impact. You
Yeah,
can
yeah,
appreciate
yeah,
that.
yeah.
All development has some impact, and even turtle grass has some impact, right? But when you look at the long term, my fear is that you're gonna have these 80 residences with their septic and sewage, right? Where they're gonna get their water from, where they're gonna dump their waste to. People have like medical issues, and they have fueling and all of that stuff for all of their boats that are coming into these marinas. It's going to be a totally different place.
So it just brings to mind what you were saying earlier, like what is the standard then? Like when what's the standard to put these developments through this spotlight to say, okay, this will have this impact. No, we shouldn't go with that. Which is maybe if they change this or they change this, it'll be a better thing. Like is there or should there be a clear standard?
Right. And so this is one of those things where you have to get into the social, the economic, and the environmental at the same time. So if you're going to sell out any of our resources, we as Bahamians need to understand what the layout is for the future. If I know that every 2 weeks I could go out here and I could go fishing for my family, and we could have our monthly fish meal from this environment. Now you're telling me that at least 50 years on that lease, 100 years into the future, none of my family will have their 2 groupers a month, right? Those groupers, they have a value to me, right? So I want to see a standard where the government can actually quantify that. Where us as Bahamians, when we do our census, we say, are we a fishing family? Do we engage in subsistence fishing? Yes. Right? If you engage in subsistence fishing, where do you engage in subsistence fishing? If you know that 80% of your population on this island or this key fishes in this area, when you get some foreigner come here and say, oh, this is a beautiful area, the fishing is awesome here, let's build a hotel on that beach right there. You're gonna say, no, that's not how it works. You could build your little boutique resort on that piece of rock over there.
Amen.
And then you could ask one of the local guides for permission to come into the area and pay them an appropriate.
See how different that sounds?
Yeah, it sounds very, something you're talking about, what is left there. And I've noticed when I dove in that area that the fishermen left the undersized conch. They never touched them. And even some mature conch was there as well.
Yeah.
So they had that respect for leaving there.
Yeah.
And in fact, the grouper, I was amazed that the grouper was at least 2 feet long.
Yeah.
And he was just swimming. No one spared him
Yeah.
because that was his home.
And they've done a lot of education in the Exuma Keys areas, partly because of the Exuma Keys Land and Sea Park, and partly the traditional work of those fishermen there. They know that a big grouper makes more grouper babies,
Right? You don't just kill and eat.
So you don't go and just like ravage the community, but you will go to some of these places where there's a lot of second home owners, and this is their second home. They treat it like the second hand, right? So they are not concerned with the stability of your environment, of your community, of your fisheries, right? They come down here and they'll come on their boat and they will take so many lobster and grouper and stuff back to the States, because when they go and sell that in the States, they don't see conch all the time. So now when they selling those, they are making enough to pay for their fuel back and forth.
They do it. And I've been on the waters, what they call the intercoastal area restaurants there. And the fishermen come there and they brag about all the conch and all the grouper and red snapper and gray snapper and yellowtail they brought in from West End.
Right.
They come and they deplete our resources like that. But, in the Great Samson Cave, I was swimming there, the turtles come up and you could actually go and you could actually touch them. They are so accustomed to just coming there and feeling at home. They're not even looking for food because that's all beautiful sandy bottom there. My God, let's protect what we have.
And once you get in a population of tourists, if you don't have the development go in with that environmental tack in the first place, you will introduce a lot of unsavory types as well. We recently had images going around on social media where a family was visiting an area where the rock iguanas are protected, but they're like pulling the iguana by the tail and harassing it and stuff like that. And that's not what you do if you care about the environment, right? And if they come into our country, we need to have a group who's going to tell them, like, listen, you come here, you are a guest. You are our guest, but we want the best guests, right? And let's make it, I'd say, like, make it a custom for us to say, you are not a good guest. You could leave, right? And that's challenging for us because we've been raised in this tourism mindset where we sell our time and our culture and our spaces to others, but not necessarily take pride of place and say, hey, we're welcoming you into our home and treat it better than you would your own home. That's how our Grammy raised us, right?
Yeah. You're right. I like that. Yeah. Again, science and perspective. Believe it or not, y'all, we have only about maybe 5 minutes left in the show. Time flew talking about the perspective of very important areas that matter to all of us, because we're all invested and good stewards of this environment.
Well, I just, before you read the other thing, Dr. Leno is a relatively young man compared to Uncle Joe here. And I know he has a lot of interaction with so many college-based students in the Bahamas. And I want to plead with him to probably have a kind of incentive program set up to motivate all these young people about every aspect of our magnificent environment. Because if we don't start to preserve it for future generations, we're going to lose it all. And I think we're doing the best we can in terms of what Javon and Waterkeepers and Save the Bays are doing in restoration, you into restoration as well. Your people always coming and assisting in all that we're doing. We got the conch restoration, we got the coral reef restoration, we got the mangrove restoration. So all of these young people have to be integrated in all of these restorative aspects so that future generations, my great grandchildren, can have something on planet Earth here. Someone calling?
Good evening,
Hello?
caller. You're on there.
Hello?
Hello, caller. You're on the air. Caller, you're on the air.
You still on, or we can't? Yeah.
Yes, they want to listen. And also, too,
Call back if you can, please. We'll
Yeah,
try.
please.
And if
Last few
you
minutes.
and if you'd like to engage with me online as well, throughout social media, I'm at Sci Perspective, SCI Perspective, and yeah, if you join me online, you can feel free to ask your science questions, and I usually get back to my viewers as well.
And
That's
he's on
side
TikTok.
perspective from
He's on
that's
Instagram and Facebook.
social media, Facebook.
Yeah.
At SCI Perspective.
Yeah, and that's Facebook, Instagram,
Yeah.
YouTube,
Doc-
Twitter, and
Dr.
TikTok.
And
Spell,
TikTok,
spell your funny name.
Oh, Lord.
And I am
Doc-
Dr. Ancelino Davis, ANCILLENO Davis, and definitely if you could spell my name, you could find me. I'm one of the easiest people to find if you could spell my name.
Yep. So again, we are in the last 5 minutes. I'll read this announcement and then I want to talk about what our takeaway is from the day because I have a big takeaway that I want to share with you all.
Okay.
So this message is from the Humane Society. Looking for great bargains and a way to help the animals of Grand Bahama, the Humane Society's Second Chance Secondhand Shop is back. Join us for our grand reopening on Thursday, September 18th at 11 a.m. We'll be open every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 11 to 3. Discover treasures from clothing and housewares to electronics and more, all at great prices. Best of all, every purchase helps provide food, shelter, and care for the animals who need us most. So shop smart, shop kind, and give the animals a second chance at life at the Second Chance Secondhand Shop. So that's from the Humane Society. And my takeaway from today is something that Dr. Leno said earlier. We have to train the public on how to give data. Now, what most of you don't know is Dr. Ancelino is very good with data and not just collecting the data, but organizing the data. And then is when you have to have your hands on that piece of data to send to the right persons, you can just go in, get it, and send the proof, the content, the stuff that needed to be done. So I want you to pay special attention to his instructions on if you were to see something and want to say something, the best way to go about it and how to record it, how to give time, like put a timestamp on the video,
Identify yourself.
identify yourself, pan around so that you don't just see a moving camera with shaking footage. And because you could see it and it's so clear, you're looking at the footage afterwards and it's grainy, it's shaky, you can't really tell. So get a clear shot, video and pictures of the issue, panned out, panned in, to the left, to the right, identify yourself clearly, say the time, say the date. Because when this information is taken and spread across social media, a lot of times the content could be used in multiple different ways, and it might not be for the original intention. So identify yourself.
And make sure that you specify what that resource means to you and how you feel it's being damaged at that time, because that triggers the proper government agency or the personnel to address your issue at that time.
Yes. For example, if you see something on a beach, like when it was like a dredging on the beach, you can say, hey, my name is so-and-so, and I've been living on this island for the past so-and-so years. This is where I go to, fill in that blank. This is where I go to fish. This is where I bring my family. This is where we go to crab and to this species of whatever is here. And it's being destroyed right now. You pan in, you pan out, you get identifying features and say the date. Because like the good doctor said, sometimes these things become viral 4 or 5 years later, and it's used like as if it's recent,
Yeah.
as if it's recent. You know what I mean? So that's my takeaway from the day. Uncle Joe, any last words?
No, I'm just happy we had someone like, I mean, he kind of befuddles my brain. I'm not a scientist like him, but I live what I live on this beautiful planet Earth. And I know when something is good for it, when something is not good for it, and I will not hesitate to speak out and let people know what we should do to preserve it for future generations.
Yeah.
We don't have the right to sell our birthright. Thousands of years from now, we should still exist on these islands if they have not been covered by the ocean by then. But we should have something left for the people to live here with. And, you know, I always say that back then, the Israelites, they were giving away the stuff for what they called selling their birthrights for a proverbial pot of porridge. And they were moving towards the promised land. And it took them, 40 years to reach the promised land. The reason why it took them so long, they could have done it in 40 days or less. The fact is that our consciousness of enslavement cannot inherit the promised land. So if you feel that you are enslaved here, get free, and then you will know how to attain and protect the promised land. Remember that even the good old Moses never reached the promised land, because even though he was the leader, he nonetheless had the consciousness of enslavement. And so enslaved consciousness, again, I repeat, cannot reach the promised land. So free yourself and gain the promised land. Doc, you're a superb being, man.
Yeah, and I just want to point out to everyone that my philosophy is that we can all use more science. Anyone can take more observations, develop your ideas, and explore it more. But we need broader perspective so that we can apply the science correctly. Don't let anyone tell you that you are not a scientist because you're a fisherman that studies the tides and the movement of the fish. Don't let anyone tell you that you're not a scientist because you could tell when the fruits are on the trees in the bush and you could pick your bush tea. You are a scientist. We want your perspective. Share with us and connect with us.
So thank you for having us, Bahamas, and we'll be back again with another amazing show in the next 2 weeks. All right.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I want you to join us in our fight to save our environment and saving the Bahamas. Save the bays.
Gibson Bay, save it. Breakers Bay, save it. Liberty Bay, save it. Let's save the bays. Rise up, Bahamas, and let your voices blaze. Stand up, Bahamas, come on, let's save the bays. God gave us this land, and this land we must save. Stand up, Bahamas, come on, let's save the bays. Our coalition's forming to stand up for what's right, to protect our Bahamas, and we're prepared to fight. Protecting our waters, protecting our land. Stop destroying our beaches and keeping all our signs. God gave us this land, and this land we must.
This is 99.5 Global Radio. This is 99.5 Global Radio.
All right, let's go. I'm Jeff Fox. Well.